7.83 hertz, the point between awake and asleep, that the quantum mind opens up into an entire new world. And that, to me, is a fascinating and entire new subject that science is now opening up before us. And, I've just finished the production of a documentary called The Quantum Mind of God, which goes heavily into this.
You're active. You're doing a lot of stuff.
Too much. Too much indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, just one thought that comes to mind here in regards to, let's say, for instance, let's take the documented case of the MK Ultra mind control experimentation that was going on with, let's say, psychedelic compounds and so forth.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that we have people who actually have gone into these altered states and actually have a terrified experience with actually meeting these serpents, as other people saw under, I guess, more shamanistic circumstances, got in contact with these serpent people or whatever, but actually come out of this with a terrifying story in rather than coming out with a lovely story or whatever? I mean,
absolutely, beyond all doubt. Absolutely. The work that I did earlier this year, last year. God, doesn't time fly? Earlier last year with a very highly peer-reviewed psychologist on the Kundalini. It means that whenever you talk about accessing this point of illumination, as they call it, or taking these drugs, or meditating, dervishing, Sufi trick, isolation, all these are different things that man uses to get into a point of altered state of consciousness. You have to be incredibly careful. Because you can cause not just psychosis, but severe psychosis. You can damage your brain in a physical way. And the scans that have been done on the brains of the people that have done this, they reveal quite distinctly the damaged cells within the brain in the particular places, in certain places. It can seriously damage you, make you psychotic, and therefore, after the effect, let alone the hell that is envisaged within it, after the effect, people are still living that effect again and again and again. And whether it's been a good experience or a bad experience, that psychosis can come out of it. So if you've had a good experience and you've seen heaven and you've had the feeling, the general feelings are sense of knowing everything, sense of feeling one with the entire universe, emotions of love, all these things and then the obverse of that, of course, in the mystical realm, or the opposites of all those things. The two sides, the dualistic sides of man. So, no longer are we just dualistic in our conscious realm, we're also dualistic in our unconscious realm. But they're fed by one another. It can cause issues afterwards, and people have you ever seen the Nexus in Star Trek, where the guy is so determined to get back into the Nexus? He will do anything to get back in it. It causes that kind of issue. People focus entirely upon it. Everybody else is wrong. Everything else is wrong. And I am purely going to concentrate on this and this alone because I need to get back. It's that kind of effect that it can cause.
Oh my.
But our ancestors told us all about this. If this is not something new, we're just finding it with science. Our ancestors told us. They said you needed balance all along. You needed to go through this without striving. The striving implies certain psychological elements about the individual. You wait. You learn in wisdom. You gain wisdom. You have the knowledge, the willpower, and the strength before you proceed. You have balance between the male and female elements, the dark and light. You know self. And that, to many people, is something that they get confused about. What on earth does he mean by I know myself? I'm a miner, or I'm a driver, or I'm a this or that. No, you're none of those things. They're your jobs. People go and watch James Bond and come out thinking that they're James Bond. They've taken on the association of something. And then they go and project that all over the place. That's not you or me. That's you or me taking on a cloak.
Exactly.
And the fact remains that to find the true self inside, it's like peeling an onion. It can make you cry. But when you get to the core, you get into the real live seed of who you are.
Yeah.
And you'll know when you find it, because you will find a place that is intuitive, that is one with nature. And when you can truly rely upon your intuition and trust it and know that your intuition is right, then you've got to that point. Because intuition is the point that we connect to nature.
Yeah.
And that's what the Gnostics told us. That's what our ancestors told us again and again and again. Don't even try to go there until you are balanced. And the trouble is, people go running off in the 70s, from the 70s, 60s and 70s onwards, and probably before. They've been running off, taking these drugs, tripping, seeing all these weird and wonderful things. And some people have come back with stories of heaven, and some people have come back with stories of hell.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind, of course, is the story of Jacob in the Bible, of course, and
absolutely.
I even connect this, of course, with the movie Jacob's Ladder, which got an adder in there, of course. But anyway, he slept on the stone and allegedly, come out of all that experience with a phrase that said, terrible is this place. And to me, that kind of saying that he wasn't ready, just as you were talking about, he wasn't ready to kind of face heaven or whatever it was that he actually got in contact with there himself or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
incredibly. There's 7 levels of heaven. 7 days of the week, 7 levels to the Kundalini.
Yeah.
7 planets as they understood them then.
Sure.
7 phases of man. 7's a wonderful number. But yeah, Jacob laid his head on a pillar, didn't he?
Yeah,
stone
sure.
pillar.
Sure. Yeah.
Which, from all the evidence that I've been able to garner, was probably granite. Which is a peculiar substance, because it resonates at a peculiar resonance, 7.83 hertz. The same point that one enters the altered state of consciousness or lucid dreaming. The same point that one is getting access to the unconsciousness. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, very interesting.
I go and think about the Great Pyramid.
Yeah, one hell of a machine for taking you to... Yeah.
Fire in the middle, I think so.
Yeah.
Was it known QT? It was known as the Great Shining.
Amazing. I mean, is there any way, you would want to tie this back to talking a little bit more about your book, your new book that is coming out? Your research into the Ark, for example. Do you want to go into that a little bit more, or do you have time for us?
Well, it ties entirely back into it. You are such an intuitive man.
Thank you.
Because it ties perfectly in. Because the point that we made in the last segment, I didn't have 2 minutes, I didn't have long enough to explain how the shroud may have been made. This is fascinating. When a person gets into that specific resonant point, when he meditates and gets into such an ecstatic state, as shown by the people of that period at that time, and as we see in the Philippines and we see in other places, a crucifixion can bring it on, and does do in the Philippines. It brings on an ecstatic state. When you resonate at that certain point, you radiate. You radiate a certain level, and to go without getting too scientific about how these photons escape from the body, etc. This person in the shroud actually radiated his image onto that shroud. And in the book, I point out how the specific chemicals and the specific radiation of the person who was in the state of high excitement placed that image onto that shroud. Now we have the science to explain how that it can occur, and we can actually replicate it. That's the incredible bit. So the other incredible part of it is that this person who did it may be in a scene, because the radiation that occurred in the fibers actually screw up entirely the carbon dating, which is a radioactive carbon dating. And it completely annihilates it and reduces it now by at least between 700 and 1400 years. So it gets it right back to the time of this supposed Jesus. There's a lot more in the book, obviously, who this guy is and how I work out why they were doing these things. But,
sure.
This it relates entirely again to what was happening before, where serpents were being nailed to crosses, where they sloughed their shroud, they sloughed their skin. All the words relate, all the etymology relates, all the history relates, the science is provable and replicable, and the history, it's an incredible story.
Yeah.
But, I believe that